Welcome back, Coinology. When we talk about American coins, the first thing that comes into mind is the iconic penny, the 1-cent coin that has been part of everyday American life for more than a century, and among the many years of issue, one particular year stands out and continues to fascinate collectors, historians, and treasure hunters around the world: the 1974 1-cent coin, a coin that may look ordinary to the untrained eye, but beneath its surface lies a story of experimentation, controversy, mystery, and even the possibility of life-changing wealth. Today we dive deep into the story of the 1974 1-cent coin, its weight, its symbol, its design, its history, and the astonishing market value it is said to have reached in the eyes of collectors, with whispers of figures going as high as $243 million for certain examples, a number so extraordinary that it almost sounds unbelievable. Yet in the world of numismatics, such surprises do happen because rarity, history, and fascination come together to create values that surpass imagination. The 1974 1-cent coin was originally struck in copper, just like the pennies that had come before it since 1909, when the United States Mint introduced the Lincoln cent to commemorate the 100th birthday of Abraham Lincoln. But by the early 1970s, copper prices were on the rise and the government began to worry about the cost of making each penny. In fact, it was becoming dangerously close to the point where the copper content in the coin would be worth more than the coin itself. So in 1973 and 1974, discussions began about changing the composition of the cent to something less expensive. That is where the story of the 1974 aluminum cent enters the picture. Most Americans never even heard of the aluminum cent because it was never released into circulation but behind closed doors at the United States Mint in Philadelphia. A bold experiment was carried out in 1974. More than 1 million pennies were struck in aluminum as a test. They weighed less than a normal copper cent, about 0.93 grams compared to the traditional 3.11 grams of the copper version, and their color was a light silvery gray, not the reddish brown that people associate with the penny. Congressmen and officials were given examples to study, and the Mint seriously considered making the switch permanently, but things did not go as planned. The aluminum cents quickly faced opposition. Medical experts warned that if a child swallowed one, the aluminum would not show up on X-rays, unlike copper coins, creating a potential health hazard. Vending machine companies protested too because their machines were calibrated for copper coins, not for lightweight aluminum tokens. The U.S. Congress also expressed frustration, and in the end the idea was scrapped. The Mint ordered all the aluminum cents to be returned and most were destroyed. However, some were not. A few examples slipped out and became legendary in the collecting community today. These surviving 1974 aluminum cents are among the most talked about coins in American history. Some say only a handful exist, with one specimen known from the Philadelphia Mint and a few reported from the Denver Mint. The Denver example in particular is surrounded by mystery and legal battles. At one point, a 1974 aluminum cent surfaced and the government immediately demanded it back, arguing that it had never been officially released and remained government property. Collectors, however, insisted that it was a historic relic that deserved to be in private hands. The legal back and forth captured the imagination of numismatists everywhere and gave the 1974 cent an aura of forbidden treasure. But let us not forget that the majority of 1974 pennies that people see in circulation are still made of copper, technically 95% copper and 5% zinc and tin, and they look very similar to the cents minted before and after. But the possibility that an ordinary-looking penny in your pocket could secretly be an ultra-rare aluminum specimen worth a fortune is what makes the year so intriguing. Now let us consider the details. The obverse of the 1974 cent bears the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln, designed by Victor David Brenner, a design that first appeared in 1909 and has become one of the most enduring coin portraits in United States history. Lincoln faces right with the word liberty to his left and the date 1974 to his right. The mint mark, either blank for Philadelphia or D for Denver or S for San Francisco, appears just below the date, and above Lincoln's shoulder the phrase "In God We Trust" is inscribed above his head, a reminder of the national motto, while the reverse of the coin features the Lincoln Memorial, an image first introduced in 1959 to commemorate Lincoln's 150th birthday. This reverse, designed by Frank Gasparo, replaced the earlier wheat ears and became the standard penny reverse for half a century. The words "United States of America" appear above the memorial with E pluribus unum just below, and 1 cent boldly inscribed at the bottom. The weight of the standard 1974 copper cent is about 3.11 grams and its diameter is 19 millimeters, but the experimental aluminum cent, as mentioned, weighed only 0.93 grams. This dramatic difference in weight is one of the easiest ways to tell if a 1974 cent might be special, and that weight difference also made it stand out in the world of mint experimentation. While the copper cents number in the billions and are common, the aluminum cents number only in single digits and are priceless. The value of the 1974 1-cent coin depends heavily on what version you have. A regular copper 1974 cent found in circulation today is generally worth only face value or perhaps a few cents to a collector if it is uncirculated or in mint condition, but the rare aluminum cent is a completely different story. Rumors and auction estimates over the years have placed the value of a genuine aluminum 1974 cent in the millions, and some speculative reports even suggest figures in the hundreds of millions. When rarity, publicity, and collector passion collide, it is not uncommon for values to skyrocket to unimaginable levels. In fact, there are claims that the market value of such a coin could reach as high as $243 million, an almost mythical sum that makes people dream of stumbling across a treasure hidden in plain sight. Think for a moment about that. The idea that a single penny, a coin that most people ignore on the sidewalk, could be worth enough to change a person's life forever, enough to buy mansions, cars, entire businesses, and still have more left over. It is that dream that drives people to check their pocket change, to study every coin closely, to learn about mint errors, varieties, and rare years. The 1974 penny, especially the aluminum version, is a perfect example of how numismatics can turn the ordinary into the extraordinary. But beyond the financial value, the 1974 penny carries a deeper story about America. In the 1970s, it was a time of economic uncertainty. Inflation was rising, commodity prices were fluctuating, and the government was wrestling with the challenge of keeping coinage affordable. The experiment with aluminum was not just about saving money, it was about adapting to a changing world. It reflected the tension between tradition and innovation, between practicality and public acceptance. In the end, the traditional copper cent endured for another decade, until 1982, when the composition was finally changed to a mostly zinc core with a thin copper coating. But the 1974 aluminum cent remains as a reminder of what could have been, the symbol of the penny. The familiar image of Lincoln has also become more than just a design, it has become a cultural icon. Lincoln is a figure who represents unity, leadership, and sacrifice, and his presence on the smallest denomination coin serves as a reminder that greatness can be found in even the humblest places. The 1974 penny, whether copper or aluminum, continues that tradition, carrying Lincoln's image into countless pockets, purses, and collections, each one a tiny piece of history. And as collectors hunt for these treasures, stories circulate of people finding unusual pennies in old jars, boxes, or family heirlooms. Sometimes coins thought to be ordinary turn out to be extraordinary. Sometimes a simple trip to a coin show reveals a discovery that changes everything. The thrill of the hunt is what keeps numismatics alive, and the 1974 penny especially, with the tantalizing legend of the aluminum cent's fuels that excitement like few other coins can. When we continue looking deeper into the 1974 penny, the story does not simply end with the aluminum experiment. In fact, that was only the beginning of decades of mystery and fascination surrounding this tiny coin. What makes the 1974 penny so incredible is that while billions of ordinary copper versions exist somewhere out there in the world, hidden in safes or perhaps lost in private collections, a handful of aluminum pieces may still survive, and the uncertainty of exactly how many are out there gives the coin an aura of almost mythical mystery. Collectors thrive on uncertainty because it turns the act of searching into a grand treasure hunt, and the 1974 cent is perhaps one of the best examples of this in the entire history of American coinage. Imagine a time in 1974 when congressmen were given aluminum pennies as test pieces. Some of them reportedly placed these coins in their pockets. Maybe they kept them as souvenirs, maybe they misplaced them, maybe they were tossed into drawers and forgotten forever. When the mint asked for all of them back, it is very likely not every single one was returned. Human nature tells us that someone somewhere decided to hold on to one or two of these unusual shiny coins, and those survivors today have become legendary because if even one of them were to resurface in the hands of a private collector, it could instantly become the most famous penny in existence, valued at staggering levels. Let us talk for a moment about the controversies surrounding the so-called 1974D aluminum cent. This coin first appeared in public when it was discovered in the estate of a former Denver Mint employee. His son revealed it, and suddenly the numismatic world erupted in excitement. The coin looked genuine, it was authenticated by grading services, but almost immediately the United States government stepped in and claimed ownership, stating that it was never legally released into circulation and therefore could not be owned privately. The family argued that it had been legitimately kept and should be theirs to sell. The case went to court, but before a final decision was made, the coin was handed back to the government and vanished into the vaults of the mint. This story alone added fire to the legend of the 1974 aluminum penny because it proved without doubt that at least one example had survived outside official hands. The numismatic community is filled with debates about whether it is right or wrong for the government to keep such coins away from collectors. Some argue that they are historical artifacts that should be preserved and studied in museums or collections. Others believe they are private property that should be freely traded in the open market. This clash of viewpoints only makes the story more gripping, and for collectors, every bit of drama increases the desirability of the coin. Now let us return to the physical coin itself. The 1974 cent, whether in copper or aluminum, has the same design elements that make it timeless. Victor David Brenner's portrait of Abraham Lincoln remains crisp and dignified. The lines of his beard, the curve of his cheek, and the stern but wise expression on his face remind us of the man who led the nation through its darkest time. And on the reverse, Frank Gasparo's Lincoln Memorial stands in proud simplicity, a symbol of unity and endurance, every column carefully engraved representing the ideals of democracy. When you hold a 1974 penny in your hand, whether common copper or hypothetical aluminum, you are holding not just a piece of metal but a piece of symbolism that stretches back through American history. The weight difference, though, is what excites experts and amateurs alike. A copper penny of that year tips the scale at 3.11 grams, a reassuringly solid weight that feels familiar in the hand, but an aluminum cent is feather light at only 0.93 grams, almost toy-like, almost otherworldly. For a collector who has studied pennies for years, the difference would be instantly noticeable, and that is why many treasure hunters keep precision scales at home, weighing their coins one by one, hoping to discover the impossible. The very idea that a simple difference in weight could transform a 1-cent piece into an object worth hundreds of millions of dollars is electrifying. Stories abound of people searching through jars of pennies passed down from grandparents or boxes of coins bought at estate sales, hoping to stumble across that rare treasure. The truth is that the chances are microscopic, yet the dream refuses to die, because numismatics is built on dreams. Every great discovery in the coin world came from someone who refused to believe that all the good finds had already been taken. The 1974 aluminum penny sits at the top of that dream pyramid, inspiring thousands of people to keep looking. Gas for the value. Let us dive deeper into how such a figure as $243 million could be imagined. In the first place, it may seem impossible, but in the world of collectibles, rarity, publicity, and demand can push prices beyond all logic. Think of famous works of art. A canvas painted for pennies centuries ago today sells for hundreds of millions. Why? Because there is only one, because it carries history, because wealthy buyers want to own the unique treasure. The same logic applies to coins. When there is only one known specimen of a coin like the 1974 aluminum cent, its value becomes almost incalculable. If two wealthy collectors both decide they must have it, the bidding could climb beyond reason into record-breaking territory. The coin becomes not just money but status, history, art, and bragging rights all in one. Add to that the legend of government confiscation, the aura of forbidden treasure, and the speculation multiplies. The 1974 aluminum cent is not just a coin, it is a story, it is a controversy, it is a symbol of what might have been, and those qualities combined are why collectors whisper about valuations in the hundreds of millions of dollars, because in truth you cannot put a normal price tag on a coin that represents so much. It transcends its face value and even its metal content, becoming a cultural artifact. Even the ordinary copper 1974 penny has its place in this story. Though billions were minted, there are varieties, errors, and high-grade examples that still attract collectors. Some coins from that year show double dies, others are struck off-center, some have unusual toning, and when found in pristine mint state condition with blazing red luster, they can fetch strong prices from dedicated collectors. While not worth millions, they still illustrate the principle that every coin has a story, and every coin can be more valuable than its face if it connects with the right buyer. The 1974 penny also serves as a link between the old and the new, because just 8 years later, in 1982, the United States Mint finally changed the composition of the penny, permanently moving from copper to zinc with a thin copper coating. In many ways, the 1974 aluminum experiment was a glimpse of the future. Though it was abandoned, the idea of replacing copper with a cheaper metal eventually became reality, and today most people carry zinc pennies without even realizing it. The 1974 aluminum cent therefore stands as a bridge between tradition and change, a ghostly forerunner of what was to come. One cannot ignore the cultural significance of Lincoln on the penny either. This was the first time an American president was honored on a circulating coin when it debuted in 1909. Lincoln's image has remained for more than a century through wars, depressions, social changes, and technological revolutions. That continuity gives the penny an almost sacred aura. Lincoln symbolizes honesty, unity, sacrifice, and resilience, qualities that resonate deeply in American culture. And when you add the layer of rarity and experimentation, as in the case of 1974, the coin takes on even greater meaning. Now picture the fascination of showing someone a 1974 aluminum penny. Imagine opening a protective slabbed holder graded by a major service and revealing that silvery coin that looks nothing like an ordinary cent. The person would be shocked, asking, how can that be a penny? How is it possible that such a small coin is worth more than entire skyscrapers or more than entire companies? The answer lies not in the metal but in the story, and that story is what has captivated generations. The story of the 1974 1-cent coin continues to grow more fascinating the deeper we explore it, because this is not just about a coin, it is about the human imagination, the drive to collect, the desire to possess something unique, and the timeless attraction of rarity. Collectors are not simply people who hoard objects, they are people who preserve history, who search for meaning in small details, who believe that an object as small as a coin can tell the story of an entire nation. The 1974 penny is a perfect example of this phenomenon because on the surface it is one of the most common coins ever produced. Billions exist, yet hidden within that sea of copper lies the possibility of something radically different, and that is where the excitement comes from. In every field of collectibles there are what experts call holy grails. In art it might be a lost masterpiece, in literature it might be a rare first edition, in sports memorabilia it could be a signed jersey from a legendary player. In numismatics, the 1974 aluminum penny belongs in that category of holy grail items. It is the coin that collectors dream of because they know it exists, they know it is real, and yet they cannot touch it, cannot buy it, cannot freely own it. The government has locked it away, and that very fact makes it even more desirable because what is forbidden always becomes more valuable. Think of the psychology behind this. Imagine two identical coins, one of them is legal to own freely and the other has been declared government property. Which one would collectors want more? Almost every time they would crave the forbidden one because it becomes a challenge, a symbol of rebellion, a chance to hold something that others cannot, and that is why stories of the 1974 aluminum cent continue to echo through the hobby like whispers of buried treasure. And yet, while we focus on the rare aluminum versions, let us not forget the billions of copper cents struck in 1974. These coins also carry history. They are witnesses to the lives of ordinary Americans who used them to buy candy, newspapers, bus tickets, and cups of coffee. They jingled in the pockets of workers, students, and soldiers. They were left as tips in diners. They rolled through cash registers in small towns and big cities alike. When you hold a 1974 copper penny, you are holding a piece of everyday history, a snapshot of a time when America was moving through challenges of inflation, political scandal, and cultural change. The mid-1970s were marked by the Watergate scandal, the resignation of a president, the aftermath of the Vietnam War, the oil crisis, and shifting social values. The penny in your pocket in 1974 was not just currency, it was a silent companion to all these events, and in that sense even the common penny becomes a time capsule. Numismatics teaches us to see coins not merely as money but as storytellers. Each date, each mint mark is a page in the history of a nation, and 1974 is one of the most dramatic chapters. Another element that adds intrigue is the way collectors hunt for varieties and errors from that year. Some 1974 cents display what is called a double die obverse, where the inscriptions or parts of Lincoln's portrait show doubling under magnification. These varieties can command premiums in the hundreds or thousands of dollars depending on condition. Then there are off-center strikes where the coin is not perfectly aligned during minting, leaving part of the design missing or shifted. There are also clipped planchets where a piece of the coin blank is missing. These error coins fascinate collectors because they are tangible accidents in the minting process, each one unique and each one turning an ordinary penny into a collectible curiosity. But none of these errors compare to the legendary aluminum cent, which has become almost mythical in the way people talk about it. Auction houses have whispered about potential sales that could break all records, though legal restrictions have always stopped those sales from happening. Just the idea that a single penny could sell for $243 million or more has become part of coin collecting folklore, and while skeptics may scoff at the figure, those who understand the psychology of collecting know that when two billionaires clash over a once-in-a-lifetime item, there is no limit to how high the price can climb. To put that into perspective, think of the famous 1933 Double Eagle, a $20 gold coin that was never legally released into circulation. Most examples were melted down by the government, but a few survived. One of them sold in 2021 for nearly $19 million at auction, setting a world record at the time. If a gold coin, of which several examples exist, can fetch nearly $20 million, imagine what a unique 1-cent coin, a true singular survivor, could command under the glare of the auction spotlight. And that is why numbers like $243 million are not as impossible as they first sound. More than money, though, the fascination lies in the chase. Countless people have taken up magnifying glasses and scales to check their 1974 pennies, carefully weighing them one by one. Some even perform specific gravity tests, dropping coins in water to test their density in hopes that one might float differently like an aluminum specimen. It is almost like modern-day treasure hunting, except the treasure could be sitting in a jar of change on a kitchen counter. The dream keeps the legend alive every day. And of course we must mention the role of grading companies in this saga. Professional coin grading services like PCGS and NGC act as guardians of authenticity and quality. When a rare coin appears in the market, collectors immediately turn to these companies for certification. The fact that a 1974 aluminum cent was once authenticated by grading experts before being seized by the government only adds more credibility to its existence and fuels further debate about whether such coins should be Allowed to remain in private hands, Lincoln's portrait itself also deserves more reflection. Brenner's design is one of the most enduring in coinage history, and in 1974 it had already been on the penny for 65 years. There is something poetic about Lincoln's steady gaze enduring through all the economic debates about copper versus aluminum, his face unchanged even as the metal beneath him was experimented with. Lincoln, who once said that a house divided against itself cannot stand, seems almost to watch silently over the controversies surrounding his coin, and that quiet symbolism is powerful. Consider too the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse. Gasparo's design is detailed enough that if you look closely under magnification you can actually see the tiny seated figure of Lincoln inside the memorial. It is a coin within a coin, a design within a design. Many collectors overlook this detail, but in the context of the 1974 penny it adds an extra layer of meaning because it reminds us that history repeats itself, patterns within patterns, stories within stories. Just as the memorial houses Lincoln's statue, the 1974 penny houses layers of history within its small round form. The dream of finding one of these legendary coins has inspired not only collectors but also storytellers, writers, and filmmakers. The idea of a common penny hiding unimaginable value is a metaphor that appeals to everyone because it mirrors life itself. We often overlook the simple and ordinary, never realizing that hidden greatness may be right before our eyes. The 1974 penny teaches us that lesson perfectly. It is both common and rare, both ordinary and extraordinary, depending on which version you encounter. The tale of the 1974 1-cent coin only grows more magnetic the more we look into it, because at its core this is a story not only about metal and minting but also about dreams, myths, legends, and human desire. People love the idea that something so small, so overlooked, so humble could secretly hold a value greater than entire nations' economies and corporations. The penny is perhaps the lowest coin in the American monetary system, and yet in the form of the rare aluminum 1974 cent it rises to a position higher than any currency value ever imagined. This contrast between the ordinary and the extraordinary is what keeps the fascination alive. It is said that when congressmen were given these aluminum test coins, some slipped them into their pockets as curiosities, perhaps thinking they were harmless souvenirs, perhaps never realizing that decades later they would be the focus of lawsuits, arguments, and whispered valuations in the hundreds of millions. Imagine being one of those individuals, holding what you thought was a simple lightweight novelty, not knowing that you carried in your pocket the financial equivalent of entire cities. That mystery of missing specimens haunts collectors today because no one truly knows how many still exist, and that unknown number is the spark that drives endless debate. If a single coin were to appear openly on the market today, the ripple effects would be felt across the entire world of numismatics. Imagine an auctioneer holding up a slabbed graded 1974 aluminum cent. Imagine the crowd hushed, every collector, every journalist, every investor watching as the bidding begins. The numbers climb past 1 million, past 10 million, past 50 million as the world gasps, because never before has a penny commanded such power. Then the hammer falls at $243 million, and instantly the coin becomes the most valuable coin ever sold, eclipsing records set by gold pieces, silver, dollars, and even ancient treasures. That moment would not just be a sale, it would be a rewriting of history, proving that a coin worth 1 cent in commerce could be worth hundreds of millions in passion. The penny itself is already deeply symbolic in American culture. The phrase "a penny saved is a penny earned," the image of children collecting pennies for causes, the tradition of throwing pennies into fountains for wishes. The humble coin has always represented more than its face value. It has represented hope, thrift, luck, and dreams. So when the 1974 penny becomes connected to figures like $243 million, it amplifies that symbolism to almost mythical proportions. The idea that the smallest unit of money could turn into one of the greatest fortunes is irresistible. Throughout history, objects that were once ordinary have gained incredible value because of rarity and story. Think of stamps once worth only a few cents, now commanding millions. Think of baseball cards printed for children's games, now worth more than fine art. Think of old comic books that sold for dimes, now auctioning for hundreds of thousands. The 1974 penny fits into this tradition perfectly. It proves that value is not about the intrinsic worth of metal or paper, but about what people believe about the story they attach to an object. The coin becomes a vessel for imagination and belief. For collectors, the thrill of the hunt is perhaps even more important than the end result. Thousands of people sift through jars of change, weigh coins, measure them under calipers, hold them up to lights, compare colors, and listen for the difference in sound between copper and aluminum. They chase after that elusive lightness, the possibility that 1 penny in their jar might not feel quite right, might ring differently when dropped on a table. That act of searching is its own reward because it connects collectors to a community of dreamers and treasure hunters. The 1974 penny is their North Star, the legend that keeps them looking. Yet beyond the dreams lies the hard history, the United States Mint in Philadelphia struck over 1 million aluminum cents as tests, but only a tiny fraction survived in any form. Most were destroyed, melted, recycled, gone forever. The Mint ordered them back and employees obeyed, but we know from history that total destruction rarely means total destruction. There are always survivors. A coin misplaced in a desk drawer, a specimen carried home by accident, a piece forgotten in an envelope. Decades later, these survivors become the rarest treasures. Because they were never meant to exist in public hands. The Denver Mint story adds another layer of intrigue because the discovery of a 1974 aluminum cent seemed to break all rules. The government moved quickly, demanding its return, and when it disappeared into mint vaults, it created a sense of lost treasure, like the Ark of the Covenant hidden away in secrecy. This secrecy fuels the market even more because collectors want what they cannot have, the very fact that the government insists on keeping. It only increases its desirability. The forbidden fruit effect, once again showing how psychology shapes value. The market value of $243 million might sound like exaggeration to some, but let us think logically about why it is not impossible. The coin market has repeatedly shown that rare objects break records when supply is zero or near zero and demand is worldwide. There are countless billionaires in the world who already collect art, yachts, rare cars, and jewels for them. Spending hundreds of millions on the most famous penny in history would not be impossible. It would be a trophy piece, a conversation starter, something no other billionaire could claim to own, and that competition is what drives prices sky high. Consider also the media frenzy that would follow if such a coin went to auction. Headlines across newspapers, television channels, and websites would shout about the penny worth hundreds of millions. Suddenly, people who had never thought about coins would start checking their change. The entire market for rare coins would see a surge because attention creates curiosity and curiosity creates demand. In that sense, the sale of a 1974 aluminum cent could reshape the entire coin collecting world, pulling it into mainstream attention like never before. And then there is the emotional side. Imagine being the person who discovers one. Imagine emptying an old cigar box in a dusty attic and among the copper coins finding one that feels suspiciously light. You take it to a dealer, the dealer gasps, you send it for grading, and weeks later it comes back labeled 1974 aluminum cent genuine. The realization hits you that you are holding a fortune in your hand, a coin worth not just millions but potentially 243 million. That moment of discovery would be one of the greatest numismatic stories ever told. It is that dream that drives countless people to never stop looking. What makes the 1974 penny especially captivating is that, unlike gold or silver coins, it is not about precious metal content, it is about history, rarity, and story. It reminds us that true value comes from narrative, from what an object represents. The aluminum penny represents experimentation, government secrecy, lost treasures, forbidden ownership, and the ultimate underdog story. A 1-cent coin rising to unimaginable wealth. No wonder collectors speak of it with awe. The saga of the 1974 1-cent coin does not belong only to American collectors, it belongs to the entire world of treasure seekers, because money is universal and the idea of hidden value is something that every culture understands. When word spreads that a penny worth 1 cent could secretly be valued at $243 million, ears perk up across the globe, from collectors in Europe to investors in Asia to treasure hunters in Australia. Everyone begins to wonder if perhaps somewhere in their own pocket change lies the discovery of a lifetime. The story transcends borders and becomes a universal myth, the myth of the humble coin that holds a kingdom's ransom in value. When we look across history, we see that coins have always had the power to capture imagination. The Roman aureus, the Greek drachma, the Spanish doubloon, the British gold sovereign. Each of these coins became legendary in their own right, tied to empires, explorers, wars, and wealth. Yet the 1974 penny is unique because it is not made of gold or silver, it is not ancient or medieval, it is modern, humble aluminum and copper, and yet it rivals those treasures in mystique. It proves that value is not about age or metal but about rarity, story, and the human urge to own the unownable. Imagine if one day a 1974 aluminum cent were displayed publicly in a museum under glass. Millions of visitors would line up to see it, not because it is beautiful like a jewel, not because it is grand like a crown, but because it is ordinary and extraordinary at once. It would look like any penny anyone might have tossed on the ground, yet behind that ordinary face lies a tale of government secrecy, lawsuits, controversy, and unimaginable fortune. People would stare at it and think to themselves, how many times have I walked past a penny and ignored it without realizing that one of them could have changed my life forever? The coin also becomes a symbol of fate and chance, because finding such a treasure would not necessarily be about skill, it could be about pure luck. A child digging through their piggy bank could stumble upon it, an elderly person cleaning out an attic could uncover it in a forgotten jar. Chance could crown anyone as the discoverer, and that randomness makes the dream even more powerful because it suggests that greatness is possible for anyone. But let us not ignore the role of collectors who dedicate their lives to the search. Some people spend decades hunting coins, traveling to shows, auctions, flea markets, Estate sales and online listings with sharp eyes and sharper instincts. They know every detail, every weight, every mark of authenticity. They are like detectives chasing mysteries through history. For them, the 1974 penny is not just a dream, it is a mission, a challenge to their skills, a test of their patience and perseverance. It is the mountain peak of numismatics, and only a few will ever get close to it when comparing the 1974 aluminum penny to other legendary coins. We can see why its myth has grown so strong. Take the 1913 Liberty Head nickel for example. Only 5 are known and each one has sold for millions. Collectors know their stories by heart, yet the aluminum cent has a mystery that even those nickels do not. It is the element of secrecy, the fact that it was never meant to be released, never meant to exist outside of government walls, adds a forbidden edge. Another example is the 1804 silver dollar, called the king of American coins. Its fame rests on rarity and history, but unlike the 1974 penny, it was made of silver and intended for presentation. The penny, in contrast, was almost an accident, a side experiment that became legend. Sometimes accidents create the greatest treasures. Another reason the 1974 penny's story endures is because of its connection to a figure like Abraham Lincoln. Lincoln is universally admired as a leader who embodied honesty, courage, and unity. His presence on the coin adds gravity and dignity to the story. When people think of Lincoln on the humble penny rising in value to $243 million, they see it almost as a metaphor. Lincoln, the man of humble beginnings who rose to greatness, and the penny, the coin of humble value that rose to pricelessness. The parallel is poetic, and collectors love poetry hidden within metal. The market speculation about the 1974 penny also reflects a larger truth about human society, that value is not fixed, it is created by belief. One person's scrap is another person's treasure. One society's smallest coin can become the world's most valuable artifact when enough people believe in its significance and when wealthy buyers are willing to prove that belief with their bids. The 1974 penny demonstrates this principle with striking clarity, and it serves as a lesson not only for collectors but for everyone who wonders how value is created. Consider the future. What if in the next decade a genuine aluminum cent emerges in private hands and is legally cleared for sale? The coin market would change overnight. Prices of rare coins across the board would rise. New collectors would flood into the hobby. Inspired by the story, investors would start buying coins as alternative assets, not just for history but for potential fortune. Entire television networks would cover the auction live. The world would watch as a 1-cent coin redefined what a collectible could mean. Such an event would not just make history, it would shape the future of collecting itself. But the legend does not only live in the auction houses, it lives in ordinary homes. Countless people still keep jars of change on dressers in kitchens and garages. These jars are modern treasure chests waiting to be opened. Every time someone pours out a jar of coins, they have unknowingly created a tiny archaeological dig where a piece of history might emerge somewhere. Perhaps in one of those jars lies the coin that will stun the world someday. The dream never dies, and that is why the story of the 1974 penny will always be retold. The coin is also an example of how governments sometimes underestimate the passion of collectors. To them, the aluminum experiment was a failure, a line in the history books, an abandoned plan, but to collectors it became a grail. The government tried to destroy them, but the very act of trying to erase them gave them more power, more allure. Absence creates desire. When something is denied, it becomes more wanted. The aluminum penny became immortal precisely because it was forbidden. Over time, myths have even grown around the coin. Some claim there are dozens hidden in private hands, others say only 2 or 3 remain. Some even believe a stash of them lies forgotten in mint vaults waiting for rediscovery. Whether true or not, these myths fuel the fire because humans are storytellers, and every myth adds another layer to the legend of the penny. Imagine if one day a metal detector hobbyist scanning a field stumbled upon a small silvery coin brushing off the dirt to reveal the date 1974 and the unmistakable portrait of Lincoln. What would follow would be a media explosion. The detectorist would become famous overnight. The coin would be seized, studied, argued over, and perhaps eventually auctioned for a record price. It sounds like a fairy tale, yet numismatics is full of fairy tales that turned out to be true, and that possibility is what keeps everyone dreaming. The fascination with the 1974 penny does not stop at rarity or legal battles. It extends into the lives of collectors who have spent fortunes chasing the rarest treasures throughout history. The names of certain collectors are etched into numismatic legend. John J. Pittman, Elias Berg, Farouk. These were people who believed coins were more than money. They were pieces of art, pieces of power, pieces of humanity itself. If a 1974 aluminum cent were to surface today, every great collector's name would instantly be tied to it, because ownership of such a coin is not just about having metal in a slab, it is about becoming part of history and attaching your name to a legend forever. When King Farouk of Egypt amassed his legendary coin collection in the 20th century, he pursued rare coins with almost limitless resources. His collection included rarities like the 1933 double eagle, and it showed the world that coins could be treasures fit for royalty. Imagine then how a 1974 aluminum penny would have fascinated him. A coin so humble yet so forbidden he would have moved heaven and earth to possess it. In fact, if Farouk were alive today and bidding at auction, the price might indeed reach hundreds of millions, because he would have seen it as more than money, he would have seen it as destiny. The symbolism of the 1974 penny is so deep that it transcends collecting entirely. The penny is Lincoln, the penny is humility, the penny is the working class, the penny is the overlooked, and yet this single year carries the possibility of unimaginable value. It is as if destiny itself chose 1974 to remind the world that greatness can come from the smallest places. In this way, the penny becomes a metaphor for life. How often do we ignore small opportunities? How often do we dismiss the ordinary when hidden within it may be something extraordinary? The 1974 penny is a lesson in paying attention, a reminder that treasure may lie where we least expect. If one of these aluminum cents were discovered today, the cultural impact would be enormous. Picture the headline screaming penny worth $243 million discovered in attic, or child finds coin in piggy bank worth more than skyscraper. Social media would explode. Videos would trend across the globe. Millions of people would search their change jars. The mint would be bombarded with questions. Talk shows would invite experts to explain the phenomenon, and suddenly numismatics would no longer be a niche hobby. It would be front page news. That is the power a single coin can have. It can shift culture by sparking curiosity and wonder in the minds of millions. The coin would likely appear on television, perhaps in interviews with the discoverer, who would become a celebrity overnight. The story would inspire books, documentaries, perhaps even films, because the narrative is so powerful. The smallest coin turning into the largest fortune. It is a modern fairy tale, one that everyone could imagine themselves being part of, because everyone has held a penny in their hands at some point in their lives, and that personal connection makes the story resonate universally beyond cultural shockwaves. The discovery would also cause economic ripples. Investors might begin pouring money into rare coins as alternative investments. Prices of high-grade coins across the board would surge. Auction houses would prepare for record crowds. Dealers would experience unprecedented demand. The entire numismatic market would be transformed by the validation that yes, a penny can be worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Skeptics would be silenced and collectors would rejoice. The 1974 penny would become the flagship of a new era of coin collecting. There is also the deeper human side to consider. If someone of modest means discovered such a coin, their life would change forever. Debt could be erased, futures secured, generations lifted from poverty. It would be as if destiny placed fortune in their path through the humblest of objects. The emotional power of such a story would spread worldwide, inspiring others to look closer, to dream bigger, to believe in possibilities. It would become more than a coin, it would become a symbol of hope and chance. Even the debates that would follow would add to its legend. Questions of legality would resurface. Would the government try to claim it as property? Would the courts be flooded with arguments about ownership, or would public pressure force the authorities to allow the finder to keep it? Such drama would only increase the spotlight, because every great treasure story has conflict and resolution, and the 1974 penny would be no different. But let us not forget that behind all the speculation and glamour lies the simple physical coin, a disc of metal less than an inch wide bearing the face of Lincoln and the words "In God We Trust, Liberty," and the date 1970 for the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, standing in its neoclassical lines: United States of America, 1 cent. It is the same design billions of people have seen billions of times, and yet for this single year and this single experiment it transforms into something far beyond itself. The ordinary becomes extraordinary, not through change in design but through change in circumstance and rarity. This is why collectors never stop looking. Every coin they pick up is examined carefully, every day checked, every mint mark studied, every weight measured, because they know history has shown again and again that treasures hide in plain sight. The 1974 penny fuels that fire like few other coins can. It whispers to collectors that yes, miracles are possible. Yes, the ordinary can hold greatness. Yes, the overlooked can shine brighter than diamonds. Compare it with art. Imagine the Mona Lisa hanging in the Louvre. Millions travel to see it because it is unique, priceless, and filled with mystery. Now imagine a penny serving the same role. People traveling across the world not to see a painting but to see a tiny coin in a glass case. And yet the emotional reaction would be the same: awe, disbelief, fascination. Photographs taken, stories told. The penny would join the ranks of cultural icons, not just numismatic icons. It would become a universal treasure. The $243 million valuation also forces us to ask, what is true wealth? Is it the gold in vaults, the paper bills in banks, or is it the stories we attach to objects? The 1974 penny shows us that wealth can be created by meaning, by belief, by human passion for history and rarity. It teaches us that even the smallest thing can hold infinite value if enough people agree that it matters, and in that sense the penny is a mirror reflecting back to us our own collective imagination. And so the legend continues. People still pour through rolls of pennies bought from banks, searching for that lightness, that silvery flash that tells them they have found something impossible. Thousands of hopefuls keep jars and boxes, weighing and reweighing their finds just in case fate smiles on them one day, and perhaps fate will perhaps Someday soon the world will witness the moment when a 1974 aluminum cent re-emerges from the shadows and once again rewrites the definition of value. Imagine for a moment if history had taken a different turn and the aluminum penny had been approved for circulation in 1974 instead of being cancelled. The United States would have released billions of lightweight silvery pennies into the hands of Americans overnight. The sound of coins clinking in pockets would have changed forever. Gone would be the familiar copper tone, replaced by a faint metallic ring unlike anything heard before. Vending machines, cash registers, banks, and even children's piggy banks would all have carried this new experiment, and what was once just a trial would have transformed the fabric of everyday life. The entire perception of the penny would have shifted and the humble cent would have been reborn, but reality chose a different path. The mint cancelled the aluminum project and ordered the pieces destroyed, which only made them more desirable by not releasing them. The mint accidentally created a ghost coin. A forbidden coin, and ghost coins always capture imagination, because they represent the world of what could have been. Each surviving example becomes a relic of an alternate history, a fragment of a timeline that almost existed but was erased. It is as though fate itself placed the 1974 aluminum cent in the twilight between reality and myth, neither fully gone nor fully present. The story also lends itself to treasure hunting. Imagine dusty attics across America filled with old coin jars forgotten for decades, children in the 70s tossing pennies into piggy banks without realizing they held something that one day would be called priceless. Perhaps one of those piggy banks still rests unopened in a box in someone's basement, a box marked old toys or childhood things. Perhaps inside rests a miracle waiting to be rediscovered. This is the dream that drives treasure hunters, the chance that ordinary corners of the world hide extraordinary fortune, and the 1974 penny is the perfect fuel for that fire picture. Also, the collectors who dedicate their lives to these searches, their magnifying glasses, their digital scales, their endless rolls of coins purchased from banks to sift through late at night, each coin turned over, examined, weighed, studied, compared, and always the thought in the back of the mind, maybe, just maybe, this roll contains the treasure. Maybe this handful of metal discs is the key to history. Some search for years, some for decades, some never stop until the end of their lives, and even if they do not find the aluminum cent, the journey itself becomes meaningful because each coin tells a story, each coin connects them to the past. If the aluminum penny had circulated, it would also have changed the trajectory of coin design in America. We may have never returned to copper and zinc. The mint might have expanded aluminum to other denominations, nickels, dimes, perhaps even quarters. The composition of US currency could look radically different today. Instead of the familiar heft of coins in our hand, we might know only the feather-light touch of aluminum discs. The failure of the 1974 experiment preserved tradition, but the imagination lingers on how different life would have felt if billions had carried that silver gray cent, and yet rarity is what gives it value. Had it circulated, none of these pennies would be worth millions. They would be as common as sand, and no one would give them a second glance. It is precisely because they were struck and suppressed, because they were never meant to survive, that they have become objects of myth and a strange twist of fate. The destruction created the legend, and the few that remain hidden or forbidden now shine brighter than if they had been everywhere. Sometimes absence is the greatest gift a treasure can possess. The cultural imagination also plays with legends of secret hoards. Some whisper that a retired mint worker smuggled out more than one example and passed them down secretly within a family. Others claim private collectors have hidden them in safes, waiting for the right moment to reveal them to the world. Still others believe government vaults contain undiscovered specimens forgotten and locked away behind steel doors. Each of these stories adds another layer to the mystery. Whether true or not, they keep the flame alive because legends thrive on uncertainty. The 1974 penny has also inspired countless what if stories. What if a schoolchild had unknowingly spent one at a candy store? What if a cashier had received it in change and tossed it into a till? What if one lies buried under soil after being dropped on a sidewalk 50 years ago? Every possibility is tantalizing because it reminds us of the fragility of value, how easily fortune can be lost or overlooked. A coin worth hundreds of millions today could once have been traded for a stick of gum. That contrast between then and now deepens the allure. If one were to be found in circulation today, the shockwaves would be immense, because it would prove that despite decades of searching, despite the most advanced knowledge of experts and collectors, the greatest treasure of all was hiding in plain sight all along. It would teach the world a humbling lesson, that even with all our technology and expertise, we can still miss miracles under our very noses, and that revelation would only make the coin more powerful in the eyes of history. In the realm of alternate history, the 1974 penny also sparks imagination of political and cultural change. What if the United States had adopted aluminum permanently? How would that have influenced mining industries? What would it have meant for copper suppliers and the economies tied to that metal? What policies would have shifted had billions of pounds of aluminum been required yearly for coinage? Perhaps wars over resources would have taken different shapes. Perhaps industries would have risen or fallen, all because of the penny. It sounds small, but history often turns on small things, and the aluminum cent could have been one of those pivot points. Even today, artists and writers sometimes used the story of the 1974 penny as metaphor in essays, poems, and speculative fiction. The idea of a worthless object suddenly becoming priceless speaks to universal human experience. It resonates with the poor who dream of fortune, it resonates with the rich who fear missing opportunities, it resonates with dreamers who believe the world hides secrets waiting to be discovered. The penny is not just metal, it is story, and stories are what endure. And then there is the ultimate dream, the auction itself, the day when one of these coins, if ever legally cleared, appears on the block, cameras flashing, bidders raising paddles, prices climbing higher and higher until the final hammer falls at 243 million or perhaps even higher. The day would not just be an event, it would be a spectacle broadcast live across the world, watched by millions who may never have cared about coins before but who suddenly realize that history is being written in front of their eyes. Imagine the moment of discovery, a quiet evening, perhaps someone sorting through an old jar of coins just for curiosity, weighing them in the hand, letting them fall one by one across the table, the sound of metal clicking together filling the room. Then suddenly something feels different, lighter than it should. The person pauses, holds it up to the light. The date 1974 glimmers, the familiar face of Abraham Lincoln looks back, but the color is silvery, not copper. A quick scale reading confirms it weighs less than it should. Heartbeats quicken, palms sweat, the mind races. Could this be real? Could this be the legendary aluminum cent that the world has whispered about for decades? At that instant, life changes forever. The room is the same, the jar of coins is the same, but destiny has entered. From that moment, the story takes on a life of its own. The finder consults experts, whispers spread across collector forums, journalists catch wind, headlines appear, news vans pull up to the street, neighbors gather outside, reporters shout questions across the lawn, cameras flash, every word, every movement is broadcast worldwide. The discoverer's name becomes known to millions overnight. It is no longer just a coin, it is a phenomenon, a legend made flesh. After half a century of waiting, the world finally sees what has been hidden. The frenzy does not stop with the media. Ordinary people across the globe rush to check their own coins. Jars spill open, drawers empty into piles, kitchen tables covered with copper brown pennies being turned over one by hands, young and old. The dream spreads like fire, the idea that anyone anywhere could still stumble upon unimaginable fortune in the most ordinary of places. Hope flickers in households that had long forgotten such things. It becomes a collective treasure hunt, a worldwide moment of curiosity and wonder. At the same time, the coin is taken under heavy security, transported to vaults guarded day and night, examined by experts who weigh, measure, and authenticate every detail. Laboratories confirm the composition, microscopes search for marks. The story is covered in scientific journals, legal experts debate ownership rights, politicians are asked for comment, collectors argue in hushed voices about what the final price might be, and the world waits with bated breath for the day the coin is put up for sale. When the auction finally arrives, the world watches live. It is more than a sale, it is theater. The coin rests in a glass case on a velvet cushion, bathed in lights. Television cameras zoom in every angle, broadcast across screens as the auctioneer calls for opening bids. The numbers climb faster than anyone imagined. 1 million, 10 million, 50 million, 100 million. The crowd gasps, paddles rise with trembling hands, phones buzz in private booths where billionaires consult advisors. The tension builds, each new bid breaking world records until at last the final number is reached, $243 million. The hammer falls, the audience erupts. And history is made. In that instant, the penny is no longer just money, no longer just a collectible, it is a cultural icon. It joins the ranks of the most famous treasures on earth, alongside the Hope Diamond, the Mona Lisa, the Rosetta Stone, and yet it is smaller, lighter, humbler than them all. The contrast is what makes it unforgettable. The object we all know, the object we all overlook, becoming the most valuable of them all. But deeper still lies the question, why do humans chase treasures? Why does the 1974 penny hold such power? The answer is layered. It is not just about wealth, though the wealth is staggering. It is about mystery, about the thrill of discovery, about the dream that fortune can be hiding in plain sight. It taps into something primal, the same instinct that drove explorers across oceans, miners into mountains, and archaeologists into ancient ruins. The hunt for hidden value is written into our blood, and the penny is simply the latest chapter of that eternal story. There is also something philosophical at work. The penny reminds us that value is not fixed, it is created by belief. Copper and aluminum have little worth on their own, but when humans attach history, rarity, and meaning, they become priceless. The coin becomes a mirror showing us that meaning is what makes things valuable. Just as in life, it is not always the obvious or the grand that matters most. Sometimes it is the smallest, simplest, overlooked things that hold the greatest worth. And so the legend of the 1974 penny is more than numismatics, more than history. It is a parable for all of humanity. It teaches patience, it rewards curiosity, it elevates the humble, it transforms the ordinary into the extraordinary. It keeps alive the dream that the next discovery, the next miracle, the next treasure might be just around the corner, waiting. In the change we carry in our pockets or the jars we leave on shelves, perhaps that is why the story endures, why collectors keep searching, why the myth refuses to die, because in a world that often feels predictable and mapped out. We need mysteries, we need wonders, we need to believe that not everything has been discovered and that destiny can still surprise us. The 1974 penny is that spark of wonder that keeps curiosity alive, reminding us that the world is not finished giving us miracles. Time moves forward as it always does, and we must ask, what happens when the immediate frenzy of discovery fades? What happens when decades pass and the 1974 penny becomes not just a record breaker but an artifact of legend? Imagine centuries from now, long after today's headlines have been forgotten, archaeologists and historians opening vaults or museums stumbling upon the coin preserved under glass. Its story, passed down through generations, the astonishment of learning that a 1-cent piece once sold for $243 million will strike future minds with disbelief. It will seem almost like myth, like the tales of El Dorado or the lost city of Atlantis, except in this case the myth is real. In classrooms, children will be told of it as an example of how value is created not by metal alone but by history, by rarity, by the dreams of human beings. The story will illustrate to future generations that wealth is not only gold or silver but also the meaning we attach to the most humble things. The penny will serve as a symbol of how humanity treasured not just riches but stories, how we gave value to memory, imagination, and history. Museums of the future may devote entire wings to money and economics, and at the heart of those displays the 1974 aluminum cent may rest small yet radiant under layers of protective glass. Visitors from around the world traveling across continents to glimpse it, whispering in awe as they stand before it, cameras capturing its image, holograms projecting its story, documentaries retelling the drama of its discovery, its legal battles, its auction, its rise to glory. The penny will have outlived empires, corporations, and technologies, yet it will endure because meaning endures. Think also of the philosophical questions that future thinkers might ask. Why did people in the 20th and 21st centuries place such staggering value on a coin that cost less than a cent to make? Why did humans fight, debate, and dream about such a small object? The answers will reveal truths about us. They will show that humans have always sought symbols that elevate the ordinary into the extraordinary. They will show that we are a species that needs myth, needs treasure, needs something to chase beyond the horizon. It may even become part of global folklore the way people once told stories of hidden gold and pirate ships. The 1974 penny might become the centerpiece of legends about the modern world. Children centuries from now might hear bedtime stories about the humble cent that became worth more than castles or kingdoms. Storytellers might frame it as a fable, teaching that no one should overlook the small because greatness often hides in what seems insignificant, and in those stories the penny will live on as more than a coin. It will live on as a lesson if we extend our vision even further into millennia, to a time when civilizations rise and fall. Imagine explorers of the distant future uncovering relics of our age among the ruins of cities buried under soil or sea. One day perhaps the aluminum cent will be unearthed from its protective case, the words United States of America still legible, the image of Lincoln still strong, and the scholars of that time will marvel. They will reconstruct its story. They will say, here is proof of what these people valued, proof of their dreams, their myths, their obsessions, and they will add the penny to their chronicles of human heritage. The coin may even survive when paper records have faded, because metal endures. Metal carries voices across ages. Just as Roman coins still speak to us from 2,000 years ago, so too will the 1974 penny speak to those who come after us. It will tell them about scarcity, about chance, about how a great nation once experimented with aluminum, and how that small decision created one of the greatest treasures of all time. There is a beauty in knowing that something so small can carry so much weight across time. The penny reminds us that our actions today ripple into the future. The choice of the U.S. Mint in 1974 to test a new material may have seemed like bureaucracy, but it became history. It became a story that will echo for centuries to come. It proves that greatness is not always planned. Sometimes it is accidental, sometimes it is the byproduct of a choice forgotten in the moment but remembered forever in legend. And if we dare imagine even further into the realm of science fiction, picture a time when humanity has left Earth, colonized the stars, built cities on distant planets, coins no longer used as money, replaced by digital credits and advanced technologies, yet in museums on Mars or stations orbiting other worlds the 1974 penny may still rest behind glass, ancient yet enduring. People of the future touching the barrier, gazing at the tiny relic of Earth, thinking to themselves, how strange that once upon a time a single cent was worth a fortune. How strange that humans believed so deeply in stories that they turned metal into myth, and in that moment, even across galaxies, the penny will connect them back. To use it is not just about value, then it is about continuity, the continuity of human imagination. From the caves to the cities to the stars, we have always told stories about treasure, and we always will. The 1974 penny is one chapter in that eternal saga. It may not be the last, but it is one of the most powerful because it reminds us that wonder can be hidden anywhere, even in the smallest coin in your pocket, even in the most overlooked detail of life, and so when the story is told in the far future, it will not be remembered simply as a rare coin but as a symbol of hope, of curiosity, of the human desire to find meaning in the ordinary. The 1974 penny will stand for the dream that greatness can hide in the simplest of places and that truth will make it immortal. And so as our journey with the 1974 penny draws to its end, we find ourselves returning to the very beginning, to the idea of a coin so small, so humble that it should have been forgotten, yet instead it has become unforgettable. A single cent that was meant only as an experiment, meant to be discarded, meant to vanish, has risen to become one of the greatest legends in the history of money, and perhaps one of the greatest symbols in the history of human imagination. The weight of it less than a gram, the size of it less than an inch, the image of Lincoln steady as always, the words liberty and in God we trust standing as they have for more than a century. And yet behind this simple face lies a saga of secrecy and destruction, of rumors and discovery, of lawsuits and auctions, of collectors and dreamers, of ordinary people turning over pennies in their hands and daring to believe that maybe, just maybe, their lives could change with a single discovery. It is more than rarity, more than wealth, it is a reminder that history hides in plain sight, that miracles do not always come dressed in gold and jewels. Sometimes they come dressed as the most ordinary of objects. Sometimes the treasure of a lifetime is hiding in the palm of your hand and you do not even know it until the light catches it just right and destiny whispers in your ear. The $243 million value is staggering, but the true value is not in dollars, it is in the dream it inspires, the thrill of possibility, the hope that the smallest things can hold the greatest secrets, that greatness is not reserved for the grand but can be found in the humble, the overlooked, the forgotten. And in that lesson the penny transcends money. It becomes philosophy, it becomes poetry, it becomes a mirror reflecting the truth of life itself. So whether one is a seasoned collector or someone who has never thought twice about the coins in their pocket, the 1974 penny calls to all of us. It calls us to look closer, to wonder more, to believe that even in a world mapped and measured there are still mysteries to be discovered. It calls us to treasure the ordinary because hidden within it may lie the extraordinary, and above all it calls us to never stop dreaming because dreams are what turn metal into legend and stories into immortality. The story of the 1974 penny will not end here, it will continue to ripple outward into future generations, whispered among collectors, studied in museums, told as fables in classrooms, remembered as proof that even the humblest of objects can become priceless. It will live on because humans need stories like this to remind us that the world is full of wonder and that miracles are still possible. And so as we close the chapter on this remarkable tale, let the 1974 penny stand as more than just a coin. Let it stand as a symbol of hope, a symbol of chance, a symbol of how history and destiny sometimes collide in the smallest of places. Let it remind us all that greatness can be hidden in plain sight, and that perhaps the next great discovery is waiting not in distant lands or ancient ruins but right there in the change rattling at the bottom of your pocket. And with that the legend of the 1974 penny lives on, eternal in history, eternal in imagination, eternal in the hearts of all who believe that even a single cent can hold the weight of the world.